Hey, everybody loves thermal scanning, so why don't we take a little bit of a deeper dive into that right now and understand a little bit of what we're taking a look at with these scans, which are the NCM and the DTG. For those of you who are in the scanning community, you do know this, and that is that thermal scanning is one of the easiest ways to help people understand exactly what's creating the stress on their nervous system and where it is eking its way into the changes. When we started this process of going through the R, E, and D one more time, which is the way you interpret the entire neurotech suite, which begins with the adaptive reserve R through the HRV, and we know that the next level is to look at the energy expenditures, the exhaustion, looking at EMG, and finally we're down into the D, or the dysautonomia and the depth under which change is happening. That's the value of thermography. Now, thermography has been around within a chiropractic model for years and years and years, and it's always been a mainstay, but we've added some terrific other next level interpretations to that so that you have the next level confidence to know exactly how deep or dysautonomic these changes are. And more importantly, and this is the key to all things in thermography, is are the patterns rigid or are they breaking up? And that's one of the reasons that I want to share just a few more minutes of your time to help you understand that sometimes you have to look a little deeper in the interpretation, and that's why I brought these two scans in, and that's why we developed this correlationship between NCM, which stands for neurocalorimetric, and it's the horizontal connection of segment by segment activity, versus the DTG, which is the bottom graph, which is looking at the vertical correlationship, and that way we're looking at the ability of the body to maintain temperature and be out of pattern or be in pattern the entire way of this interpretation. So if we start with what is the very traditional, which is the top NCM, we start to see that there are a lot of clear bars, and in those cases we know that those are within the normative range. What does that mean? It means when we're comparing left side to right side of that spinal neurology, it means that they're in symmetry and they're within the natural amplitude of what is considered not being dysautonomic on a horizontal basis. Now, the Uematsu papers talk very clearly that that was the data sets that we would compare dysautonomia to. But we started to realize, and this goes back into this pattern analysis, we started to realize that although they could be very much symmetrical, they could be equally wrong. And that would still show up as what we see, for instance, in those clear or white bars. And as a consequence of that, we then did a second interpretation, which is the bottom one, to see if it was cooler or warmer than the standard, which is the S1 segment that we're measuring against. And so here we go with it in this exact scan sequence, that you can see that the upper cervical spine, and anywhere from, say, C5 and upwards, is very much on the warmer side of things, which means that it's very active. And that doesn't mean that it's a problem, because obviously it's symmetrically active. But when we compare it to that C5 and 6 region, and you see the blue, well, that's really the important part of this analysis, because the blue represents a cooling trend. And although we don't see that looking above it on the NCM, we just see balance, we now get a chance to see that it's equally balanced, if you would, but cooler than it should be. And what does cooling mean? Stasis. It means that there is tissue. And then remember, this is skin temperature and the circulation in skin temperature. So in that very short window, of distance between the mid to upper cervical spine and the lower cervical spine, and now we look at the mid and upper thoracic region, we see that these bars that are sitting right at C7, T1 region, being cooler, really are representative of something as a clinician we want to understand. And we can go further down the spine and we see that T9 through 12 region, again, bilaterally cool. Yet if we were to look above that on the NCM, we'd go, not a problem. So this is one of the reasons that we have you interpreting both the NCM and the DTG at the same time. And here's what you would take away from this what I see, what I say moment. And that is very clearly that you would look at it and say, your nervous system is designed to really hold itself in its best way in which it can manage issues. And sometimes those issues are a little longer or older than we anticipated. For instance, when you see blue in this scan, it tells us that those are older patterns that we need to keep an eye on. So we're going to be reviewing both of these scans at your progress exams and your continuing exams so that we can see these patterns breaking up, but more importantly, that there's a leveling out or balancing of the actual temperatures within the skin and nervous system. And that's why we take such a detailed look at your nervous system through these scans. Something like that. I don't tend to pathologize. I don't look at these cooling trends and say, well, because it's in the T9 to 12 region, that really indicates that there's an extra load that's going on into the region of your, energy production or digestive core. That is true. But that's not how I interpret and report that. However, you do have the relationship of that patient directly in front of you to where you can say, and when we start to see a continual load like this and one that is very, very long standing, it does spill over and create changes in your metabolism that could affect your Okay, so those are some thoughts. That's why we do what we do. And I want you to go back and listen to the sequence of the R, which is the reserve in HRV, the E, which was EMG, and now the D, which ties it all together. And now you have a beautiful sequence that you can hold yourself directed to both as a clinician and as the reporting doctor. Have a great day, everybody.